And Rafael, take it away.
Hi everyone, I'm Rafael, and this is Real Talk with Rafael, where we are providing a safe space to discuss whatever we feel like discussing. Today, which topic we'll be discussing our feelings and sensitivities to the election that's coming up. We will not be really discussing political parties or political candidates, but we will be discussing how the election makes us feel and in what direction we would like to see this series go. So, yeah, let me start by saying that the election this year is, to me, is um, pretty stressful because of, well, I mean, I'm from California, and so I feel like my voice isn't really heard, and it makes me stressed out. I mean, I live in San Francisco and the San Francisco bubble, which national politics don't really affect us too much. However, I do have family and friends that are affected greatly by what's going on the national level. Just as an example, my cousin is moving to Georgia next week, and I know he's I guess he's a little afraid because of the politics that are happening. So it makes me stressed out because I don't think that we are fully aware of what's going on. And yeah, so I would just like to create this safe space for people to discuss their feelings and how we can help support each other in these turbulent times. So if anybody would like to share, feel free. Yeah. And
I just gave everyone the permission to unmute, so Carey, go for it.
Oh, well, I will say that this election time scares the bejesus out of me. It brings up for me the fact that 4 years ago, I really tanked after the election. I had a sense of having been gaslighted and trapped, and it took me back to feelings I had as a child of things that were abnormal as hell were made to look normal. And it absolutely sent me spiraling into a huge funk. I grew up in a family where my dad was a World War II survivor, and I know he was a trauma survivor. And he had a lot of rage and acted it out with violence and alcohol. And yet every Sunday morning we were dressed to go to church, and our little shoes were shined, and we looked normal. And the idea of having someone as the leader of the free world who reminded me so much of my father scared the hell out of me. And it is scary now. I mean, in the midst of what we're in the midst of. So that's what I'll say about it. I don't know that I will draw a really peaceful breath. I mean, as much as I try to be gyroscopic from the standpoint of trying to stay on center in times of high stress, which we've been in, until we know the results. And who knows when the dang results are going to come. So I'm really focused on self-care right now and staying checked in with my friends. I've got a health condition that I'm dealing with that has really rocked my world. And so I have no choice but to practice extreme self-care. Always, and especially now when I have to really not watch the news. I have to just read the news and listen to my NPR, morning edition. Their Up First podcast is how I I check in that, and then the PBS news report podcast, so that I don't get all of the hype, because that stuff just doesn't do well by me. My little central nervous system can't handle it. So that's my take on it all. I'm glad to be in a great community.
Yeah, and going off of what Carey said, I mean, I have stayed away from the news for about 3 weeks now. And it's just, I'm tired of the bad news. It's just constant bad news, and there's nothing really positive. And I wrote a blog post the other day about being indigenous and how that has affected my whole view and how it affects the way I feel about being in this country and having you all as allies. And it's just, I'm really tired of the bad news, and I don't know if I can handle it really much anymore. And yeah, I don't know what to do or where to go. And this is kind of what inspired me to create this safe space, so I can just share with everybody and have everybody share if they're comfortable sharing. It's all bad news, and I'm tired of it.
Rafael, I do think that we have to, there was a comment made not too long ago about hope no matter what, and how we have to stay hopeful no matter what. I mean, we have lived through the last 4 years, and we've done some amazing, remarkable, incredible things. And I know that it has been a hard time for you personally as a tall brown man who, the police, law enforcement seems to, track into tall brown and black men. And I love that we in ACES Connection, have hope no matter what as something that we're clinging to, because we have to stay hopeful. Some good things have happened as a result of all the insanity for the last 4 years. People are much more aware of racism. They're much more aware of inequality. They're much more aware of the inequality of the healthcare system. So, and I hope that moves people to action.
Yeah.
Donielle? Oh, after Rafael. Okay.
No, go ahead, Donielle.
Oh, I was just gonna follow up to, and apologies for being late. I just had overlapping meetings today. I wanted to follow up to what Carey shared. I find it helps with that sense of overwhelm to a certain extent, because we also just have to process the realities of the difficulties we're facing. We are facing really difficult, challenging situations that are converging all together at once. But is just to think about the whole, not just think about this time or the past 4 years, but the history of time, and think about the fact that people do make it through and try to spend time understanding how might they have done that. And sometimes it actually can involve thinking about, people have differing forms of access to, say, indigenous practices that are more grounding, healing, and centered. There's, I don't want to go too much into a tangent, but just there are always difficult situations that humans have to face. Even if we were always kind to each other, sometimes there are still there are always natural disasters that don't go, that can impact humankind, and people have experienced those and survived. So that's not to say we don't process and we don't critique and we don't try to press for more humane responses to our problems, but to avoid the despair is just to remember that humans before us, generation before generation before generation before generation, have we have within us the ability to weather and survive, and not to forget that. Because sometimes I think with the conveniences that we have and the we just kind of forget that life can be hard, and that humans have the ability to navigate it. And I just don't want us to lose the awareness that we do have the capacity. I just put that out there.
And
If I, oh, I interrupted
yeah, go ahead.
someone, sorry.
No, I've said too much. I'll go after you, Dana. Hi.
Oh, gosh. Hi, Carey, great to see everybody. You know, and honoring, I did want to give a shout out to Kathleen Murphy. She said, I agree, there's just so much anger and fear in the news all the time. I've started watching comedies on DVDs to help rid myself of all the negativity. Parentheses, sorry, no mic. And Jenna, one of our colleagues on ACES Connection, so far, you've made it through 100% of your worst days. Very, very profound, Jenna. And Kathleen said the world needs Mr. Rogers again. And I think, you know, the opportunity, because we're all dealing with collective trauma, we're all dealing with collective grief, and we're all dealing with collective loss. And when you add and compound a COVID-19 pandemic with the civil unrest and the political rhetoric and all the unknowns that are here to stay for we don't know how long, it also provides an opportunity for all of us, and you're all choir directors, you're all here, you're all choir directors, wherever your sphere of influences are. We also have opportunities for collective hope, collective healing, equity focused, and that's, I feel, one of the blessings, the silver lining that is in all of our hands right in this moment, because we're all virtual. You know, thank you, Jane Stevens. I know she's here. She's the founder of this online global learning community. So every single one of you here have an opportunity all day long, every day. You're already part of the solution. And I just wanted to share a book I was sharing with Alison and Rafael. When I went to Robert Jensen at the University of San Diego in 2005, and it was titled The Heart of Whiteness, Confronting Race, Racism, and White Privilege. 15 years ago, my life changed. And I walked out of that university to my car with tears streaming down my face. And I said, I need to understand. I hadn't even heard the words white privilege before. And when I started doing that deep dive, which I'm a lifelong learner, I'm still learning, you know, being proximate and culturally humble and being very aware of my own whiteness. And I really learned the impact of the genocide of our Native Americans, the enslavement of our African Americans, the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the first public immigration laws in the United States, the Japanese internment camps, Executive Order 9066. You can go all the way to today, wherever you are in this country, you can go right today and see the disparities. That's the part of being aware of my own whiteness that really breaks my heart. And I haven't even allowed, I don't normally compartmentalize, but I haven't even allowed myself to really feel the anguish that my heart is so broken. For 22 years, I've mentored inner city children, youth, and families. I have air conditioning. You know, I have a vehicle. I have access. I'm not living with disparities. I've had a lot of complex traumas, but oh my goodness, those that are the have-nots, that are living in poverty, that don't have access, that don't trust, that like Carey said with Rafael, being a tall Black or brown man in this country, that part breaks my heart and it hurts my soul. And I feel like leaders like all of you are on the front line of systems change, and the work that you do, even though we're virtual and we may feel isolated, this collective impact that each of us has, everyone here and thousands that aren't, we need millions of us on this front line of systems change so that we have this opportunity in our hands right now. And I really believe in my heart, ACES Connection is one of the most viable options for all of us that are here to truly transform the cultures of punitive, outdated, outmoded systems to cultures of care, hope, and healing for sustainable systems change and move that needle to prevention. So we are really helping a young mother, a teenage mother, a young mother, the moment she finds out she's pregnant in utero, all the way across the lifespan to our senior citizens. So Rafael, I'm so proud of you for creating this opportunity for Real Talk with Rafael. And we're so grateful each of you here have opened your hearts and your time with us today to process these opportunities that we all have together.
One thing too, and Dana, thank you so much, because you bring so much wisdom from your work with gangs in San Diego, with indigenous peoples, and the heart that you bring is so important. And before I went to work for ACES Connection, Jane Stevens and I would check in, because it took me 5 years to get this job. But, and after the last election, I remember talking to Jane, and I was just heartbroken. And she wrote this terrific column in February of 2017. And I have looked at it from time to time since then, the ACES movement in the time of Trump. And one of the paragraphs in it truly helped give me some perspective. And it was that, and this is Jane's words, but it really grounds me to read it. Most of us don't have the ear of a national leader, so we can throw our energies into changing our own communities to become self-healing. The kind of progress that humans have made over the last 2 centuries toward ensuring universal human rights is stunning. 200 years ago, 3 out of 4 people walking this earth lived out their lives in various types of slavery indigenous to every continent. Most children worked instead of attending school. Women were regarded as the property of their husbands or fathers. The ACES movement is the logical extension to flattening barriers to people's freedom and futures, as well as between and among people, so that we can create communities in which all people thrive. But we have to make sure we're not ignoring anyone our country has on a national level and within our communities. We can build bridges that unite everyone in the community to embrace our common respect for each other and a common purpose. This includes Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, rich, middle class, poor, urbanites, rural residents, suburbanites, all religions, all ethnicities, all races, all abilities, all genders, all ages. And I put the link to this piece in the chat. And I just think maybe I'm just going to need to read it daily for the next month or so. But I want to thank Jane for having written that piece, and us, and that all of us get to do this work that will transcend whatever happens during this time of election time, because this work will continue either way.
Yeah, I don't know, it's just, that's a wonderful paragraph, and I appreciate you saying that, because we're so divided right now. It's I don't know what the word is, but it's sad, and it hurts, because why should we be divided? You know what? How do we accomplish things by being divided? And I don't know, that's just, it hurts a lot, because I want everybody to be together and love each other and take care of each other. It hurts to see the country so divided, and just, as Dana and Carey said, just being a target for the police and just other individuals. I don't like it, and it hurts. And yeah.
Rafael, I come from New Zealand. My name's Adriana. Hi. And I'm Maori, so I'm Indigenous people. I belong to the Indigenous peoples of New Zealand. Now, you know, it's like we've been divided, and last night I went to see my nephew, and like last month his father died, and I haven't seen the family for such a long time, and his death brought us together. And it was during COVID, so we couldn't see his, you know, we couldn't do say goodbye to him in our cultural way. And it was so sad, but on the other side, there's always another side. And what that was that it brought us together. And I was sitting in the kitchen, and the family was in the lounge with my uncle lying in state. And I could just hear laughter as the family got together, came together, because he had passed, and there was laughter and their children and talking, and lots gets said in that time that's never been said before. And I think what divides us a lot is our silence. So anyway, I went to my oh goodness gracious me, I went to my oh sorry, carry on, because my batteries run out for some odd reason.
I just want to say, Adriana, while we still have you, is that that is such a powerful observation that you just made, or insight you just shared about it's the silence that divides us. Like, I've never quite thought of it that way. And then thinking about this Real Talk with Rafael as a antidote to that silence, because it brings people together to talk about what otherwise might go undiscussed. So it's something that that struck me, and I want to keep reflecting on it. It's very powerful.
And I'd like to add one other thing about, from the same note about this paragraph from the piece that Jane wrote that I shared. You know, if we've come so far in 200 years, that, you know, 200 years ago, 3/4 of the people on the face of the earth were in some type of enslavement. They didn't have the communications, the technology, the ability to travel, connect groups of people that we have. Imagine how far we can go, you know, given concerted work to change systems. And that's the key here, is the need to make systems change at every level. So I'm just throwing that out, that we may have moments of feeling deep fear and defeat and overwhelm, and keeping our eye on the prize as someone who worked for Carter, because I loved so much his stance on human rights. You know, we've come a long way. We've got a long way to go, but how long it took to get to here, and where we can go with a concerted effort like the concerted efforts of this group. The future's so bright, I'm not wearing shades, but I think there's some bright future. We just got to stay hopeful and positive and keep bucking each other up.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I talk about the pain and the hurt and the division, but I mean, we're all here to change that, right? We are here to be strong and fight and make things better, not be so divided. And yeah, that was great, that pointing out that it's the silence that keeps us divided. And because we don't know what we're all going through unless we are able to talk about it. And it's something that I would love to do, just love to facilitate. Just let's talk about what hurts us, what bothers us, how we can fix it, and just support each other. So yeah, Very insightful. I appreciate it.
Go ahead.
Adding on to what you were sharing, articulating, Raphael, you know, all of us experiencing the collective grief that we've all lost something, a way of life, a loved one, some a job, wildfires, a home, a community, and when we're all hurting collectively. We're all hurting, and we know neurologically we're wired, we're born to connect. Attachment disorder or attachment. So it's fascinating to me how we all have this opportunity right now to really send loving, healing thoughts surrounding each other. And we know, you know, if any of you are aware of the 20-year research with HeartMath, Heart, EHEART Math Institute, that science and research is proving the brain in our heart is far more powerful than the brain in our head, sends thousands more electromagnetic messages from the brain in the heart to the head versus vice versa, emits 3 feet around us. And I don't know how many years ago I first learned about HeartMath. It was another life-changing moment for me. And so what's so beautiful about that is when we really understand that and we practice the power of our breathing, intentional breathing, to remain grounded in the brain and our heart, we remain in a state of coherence. And so we can help ourselves with intentional breathing, with staying in that state of coherence within our heart. And that soothes so many dysregulations in the brain, increases serotonin. It's just gorgeous and uplifting and hopeful to know that we can do that with our own self-care. And then when we emit that love out with those around us, because love is an energy, we're all just energy. We're just energy. So we either deplete or renew. Every moment of the day, we deplete or we renew. And fear and anger and frustration are real emotions, and they deplete. And love and courage and grace and compassion and empathy are renewing emotions. And when you think about the power that we all have in our hands through intentional breathing to keep ourselves grounded in a state of coherence, and then if you know Dr. Masaru Emoto's work, the Japanese researcher and scientist and photographer, of the power of intention with our words to harm or heal. And I think it was somebody said that we have like roughly 70,000 thoughts a day, and of them are negative or redundant. So through mindfulness, look at the power that we have in our hands every moment of every day to help ourselves stay with self-love, to send love out into the world, and those permeating energy, whether people are in heaven and passed over, love never ends. And you can't be in love and fear at the same time. It's just like you can't be part of the problem and the solution at the same time. There's no ambiguity. You're one or you're the other. So where do we put our intention? Where do we put our purpose? And we do, each of us, I mean, you're all choir directors, but each of us here truly are exceptionally powerful people with emitting and emoting this healing energy out into our world.
I love everything that Dana just shared, and it's coinciding with some things that are coming up in the chat that I want to highlight, and I'm going to add something to it as well. But Sissy wrote that so many people inhibit their need to tell their traumatic narratives. This, though, depletes it's a quote, so this, though, depletes the immune functioning and increases incidence of physical illness. And then Sissy's own comment is that these conversations, the storytelling, this truth-telling, Raphael, is the medicine and the cure. And then she shares where the quote came from. And that's along the lines of what Dana was just sharing, other methods that we have that are in our body that nobody can prevent us from using and towards our own well-being. And then Carey added the note, connecting the thread from our conversation earlier, turn collective pain into collective healing and transformation, because someone talked about, it might have been Dana, how connection, we're wired for connection. And so that is gonna be part of our, I love that, Carey, we are the medicine. So that's gonna be part of our healing too, because this is this is just who we are. We can't change the fact that that's how humans thrive. So I wanted to add to that conversation. Therapists talk about how do you resource a person in order to enhance their well-being so they don't sink into despair. And I would like to expand that to how do you resource a collective? And it's both the things you do individually, but as much as possible in community, and even teaching others the individual forms of healing that they may not be aware of and know that they can access. And so there's a therapist, Shauna Murray Brown, who does actually a lot of training, I think more than she actually sees clients. And I love her work. She's one of the people who talks about therapy should not be about how does the individual cope, but therapy should be about how does the individual connect with a collective to change systems. And so she gives some insight into this. So I'm gonna, I just pasted the quote and I'll just read it really quick and then I'll be quiet. Indigenous peoples, African peoples, and the many lands of the East have communed together energetically, serendipitously to honor existence. Dancing by the drum, sitting in silence and simplicity, ritual chanting and singing, breathing in sync with movement, fasting, etching messages on the wall, creating dye from the sweetness of the earth, nourishing the body in rhythm and with the seasons. These ancient wisdoms from all over the world hold a way of being with and connecting to, noticing suffering or casting it away. All the ways of honoring the fullness of existence, noticing connection in all things tangible and intangible. These knowledges have been embedded as a way of being, a worldview of existing. So that's sort of what was in the background of my mind when I was talking about we're disconnected from a sense that we have the power to heal ourselves, and not just as individuals, but in a collective. And that doesn't mean we just cope with terrible systems. We, when we're working in collective, there's a author I love, Robin Kelly, who talks about resistance as healing. But again, that's a collective act as well. So it still means you move forward in changing the systems, but this is just a shift into seeing ourselves as powerful, not as we're simply the victims of these circumstances. We are, especially when we connect together, we have the power to actually shift those dynamics. And so as long as we're not together, like Rafael was saying, when we're divided, we've lost access to that power.
I'm back.
Welcome back.
My computer died. It just stopped. But as I was saying before, like silence sort of divides us. And, you know, I was talking to my nephew last night, and he's going through a heck of a lot of trouble. But he said that he feels that lots happens to him and he can't do anything. And it is. Everything is happening to him, and forces are coming onto him, you know, the system's against him, you know. And he said to me, he doesn't feel like he's seen. And therefore he doesn't matter. And I said, hey, you matter to me and you're really important. And that's what happened to my uncle. We all thought he was a quiet man and he didn't say much and it didn't seem like he was very important. But then when he died, lots of people felt his loss and everybody came to him and everybody was there. And I thought to myself, my goodness, it's a bit late now for me. I should have done this before. But always remember that you have others and others have you. You have others. You have somebody's back and somebody's got your back, and you're never alone. And from our cultural perspective, we are never alone. We have got our ancestors, we have got our family. We never walk alone. But it feels that way because we seem to have forgotten that we are alone, that we're at what we say, but we actually carry our ancestors with us, and we carry those who love us, not in physical, but in, you know, in our mind. To say that's what you need to think as well. And also silence separates us. So speak to others or be there with them in mind, so that you are seen. Just in case, yeah. So that's me. Sorry, my computer broke down.
No, it's fine. And, you know, I completely agree with that. And that's why I guess this election is stressful to me, because we all are in some form of pain, you know, like whether it be economic, lack of social mobility, lack of health care, whatever pain we may have, there are entities in our political system now that are just using that pain to divide us. And unfortunately, we don't know what each other's pain is because we do stay silent. And we have to find a way to, in my opinion, to discover each other's pain, make us feel safe, to allow us to be vulnerable, to allow us to share our pain, to allow us, which will then allow us to heal, which I think will then allow us to come together and unite and be stronger. And so, yeah, I think we have to find a way to heal people and bring them what they need, and not allow people to thrive and exacerbate and exploit that pain. You know, and like when Dana's been saying, we're all here because we have a lot of love, and we want to heal people. And so that's, I guess, yeah, thank you for all your comments. It's made me really think about that a lot.
But there is another side of things. There was this, I think it was an American who said something about struggle, that to make progress and to make change, you have to go through struggle. I think his name was Frederick something. But, you know, it's not until you're at rock bottom, you hit rock bottom, that you can come up again, rise up. And I guess that's what, when I go through hardship, I think, you know, I've got to get through that hard stuff before I can heal, and that brings me together, forces me to reach out, and it forces me to change. So there's always a silver lining, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, to those. Yeah, that's how I look at things. I think, oh man, why is this happening, and all that. And I think, you know, there's here. I don't know, and this is what I got from somebody. I don't know why this is happening, but one thing I know for sure, something big, something huge, something way bigger than me will come out of this, because I'm not going through all of this stuff for nothing. And that was some person, some wonderful person said that. Yeah. And I think Americans are pulling together now because of that person that you've got up there. And you're joining together because you've realized that if you don't join together, you're going to have him in power again. So, and if he does get into power, then you're going to just get together even stronger to ensure that he doesn't get into power again. So even if he does get into power, you've got to think, right, we're going to join together much better, much stronger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, Adriana, honoring what you just articulated, what I was sensing was that all of those of us that do have a voice have to be a voice for the voiceless. We have, I feel, a moral responsibility, a spiritual responsibility, any kind of an opportunity and responsibility for those of us that can. We have to do that for those that cannot. Because those that are living with these disparities, that have been living with these disparities historically, are even more oppressed now. If those of us that have access and have trauma-informed service providers, and whatever our needs are, if they're our Maslow hierarchy of needs, if they're being met, and we are feeling overwhelmed and having real fear, not just perceived, but real fear about what is happening right now in the United States, it's even more critically imperative that those that can need to stand up, be upstanders every inch of the way, more than ever before, because in my lifetime, I've never seen a time like this. And so what is the depth and meaning of that? You know, when you read that quote from that individual, there's profound depth and meaning with what is happening right now. I feel like in my lifetime, maybe in the history of humanity, more now than ever before, we collectively can transform the culture of the United States and every policy, practice, procedure, where people live, like Jane shares, where people live, where they work, where they pray, and where they play, with intention, healing-centered, equity-focused, very much.
Yeah.
And one thing to remember is that, and I remember I keep going back to this with Jane, because it must have been, it really hit me hard, because I was needing some encouragement, some hope, along about November the 5th of last year, whatever day it was. And it was probably about a month after that we had a conversation, and she said, "But Carey, I'm hearing about people coming together, people who have not come together before, coming together." And you look at that now, and you look at, you know, how many people marched on Washington the day after the inauguration in 2017, and how many people marched, you know, the Poor People's March, Reverend Dr. Barber, who is so amazing, how many people he's brought together, and the fact that people are, I think they're still protesting in Portland. I'm not sure, but I mean, I know they did for hundreds of days. And so, and that those protests, you know, you'd see all manner of people, you know, families out. So a lot of people have come together who didn't listen to each other before. I think that's a positive thing. And that's something that we are really good at doing, is bringing people together who have not been together before. And I love that.
Actually, that's like ACES Connection. I mean, now I've connected with ACES Connection. I would never have done this if I didn't feel like I needed other people to be, you know, to link in with other people. And look at all the people and all the webinars that Zooms we go on. It's just incredible.
Yeah, like you say, there's always a silver lining. That's the silver lining. People are coming together, and we're loving each other and fighting for each other to heal each other and make things better for each other. And that is what helps remove the stress from what's going on. Just knowing these things, that people are fighting for each other, fighting for those who don't have the same privileges. It's just, that's what's wonderful. And again, thank you all for being here, because we are all together here making a change. You know, there are many more of us out there working to make a change that are not here and couldn't be here maybe. you know, and that's wonderful. That's beautiful to me, and that is the silver lining, and that is what makes me not so stressed about what's going on. But just people coming together and loving each other and fighting for each other and wanting things to be better.
Rafael, this is Karen, and just listening and being part of this conversation and anticipating all that might come up in the next few weeks and has been going on for the last 4 years. I don't think before the last 4 years this conversation would have been happening, because we, with so much angst and difficulty, it's a complete understatement, for people like myself, it nudged me to move out of my comfort zone and to recognize that I have privilege, and with that privilege comes responsibility. And so now is my time to take action, speak up, be the voice, and at the same time, learn and listen, and be able to hear, like listen with your heart, really be able to hear how things are and how they impact people. And with that knowledge and understanding, using and having that knowledge and understanding, like shape the action that I would take. So I really appreciate vulnerability and having this space. And I sit here thinking, I bet 4 years ago we would not have done this, and there's others like us doing something similar elsewhere. And it is this really positive ripple, and things are changing at such a dynamic, rapid rate. There's still a lot of change that needs to happen, but it gives me hope that within my lifetime, maybe hopefully sooner, we will start to see change and equity and language change and philosophical changes and cultural changes that I don't think might have happened had we not all gone through this collective trauma with both our political leaders, but COVID as well, and at the same time being socially isolated, which gave us the opportunity to come together across geographic areas virtually. So I think, speaking of silver linings, I think that might be part of one. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so yeah, I look forward to the future, believe it or not.
Rafael, I was just going to
Yeah.
say my daughter's, this will be the first time she can vote. And last night before she went out, she said, you know, like, could I record the town hall, which of course meant 2 town halls, but it was the first time she was interested in politics enough to like want to be recorded if she missed it. And I took it as so hopeful, and it made me think about, like, I'm always thinking about what hasn't been done yet, what's yet to be done, how much work there is, and there is. But it also made me think how much has already changed since I was 18 and the first time I voted, and that a lot has changed, you know, that movement work has moved things. And I guess I don't think about that enough. And that really was encouraging to me, just realizing, yeah, and who knows what'll be possible by the time, you know, if she ever decides to be a mom, you know, and she's looking back in 35 years or whatever, and how much will have changed. Hopefully so much.
You know, if I could add to add on to what Sissy shared about her daughter voting, in 2016, there were millions more millennials with the right to vote than baby boomers. And although it happened the way it happened, that fills me with a lot of hope, because I think there's a lot more civic engagement right now in the United States. I think there's a lot more well-informed 18 and up in the United States. I wonder, we'll see if it'll be the highest percentage of people voting, at least in my lifetime, because there's never been 100%. So I am hopeful of, I really do believe our millennials, I think our young people If you have any millennials on here, Alison, Jenna, not sure, but hey, yay, millennials. I'm hopeful that they're going to change our world, truly. Eric Greenwald went around the world and interviewed millennials all over the world, and millennials want people to love who they want to love. They believe in social justice. They believe in equity. They believe that you know, so to me, I'm very, very hopeful that, you know, the choir directors here on this call and the thousands that are not, that we are, I hope in my lifetime, I want to see a healing tsunami and that tipping point.
Yeah, the young people are awesome. Yeah, so our time's coming up, I believe. I don't know, Alison?
Yeah, we have just a couple minutes left. I guess if we're just gonna be like so transparent and honest on this call, I guess I always cringe when hope is placed on our generation because I graduated from college in 2009 and it took 4 years for me to get a job with benefits. I have yet to make an income that would allow me to save to buy a home. I can't afford to have children. So to kind of say like, you know, oh, our generation, there's more hope with us. I feel like our generation got screwed. And with the, thanks, Alex. And I'm angry. I'm super angry. You know, the amount of money that we make is much lower. The amount of assets that we hold is much, much lower than any other generation. And for those of us who graduated during the recession, so those of us who graduated from 2008 to about 2010, is showing that our lifetime earnings are going to continually be less than everyone else's ever. So I just have a lot of anger and bitterness about that, about the recession and now the pandemic and not getting, I know that we each have our own life course to follow and we're each, you know, going to have different paths, but it just feels like the opportunities have been limited for those of us who are in a certain age range. I was born in 1984. And I do love that our generation does care more and that I think social media has facilitated the exchange of information and empathy. And I think that's really wonderful. But I am like extremely bitter about the reduced economic opportunities for all of us. And obviously as a white person, I have much, much more economic opportunity than people of color. And I want to acknowledge that for sure. But for those of us who are millennials, we're really, it's been, you know, I didn't even bring up college student loans. Like I don't even have time for that amount of anger. It's a lot. So that's how I feel. And if anyone has a response, we can take a couple minutes and then we'll end. Rafael, I know I saw you nodding. What's your response?
I agree because I'm barely not a millennial.
Okay.
And I feel everything you mentioned, did student loans, just, oh my God.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's just like, whoa. And we went to the same school, so yeah.
They made it really, I mean, I feel like Berkeley helped a lot. I was a Pell Grant recipient. I got so many scholarships and loans and grants, and it still wasn't enough. I still came out of Berkeley with about 20 grand in loans, maybe more, maybe a little more. And that was with Berkeley being like, we're going to try and make this as affordable as possible for you as a poor person. Yeah. Carey?
Okay, so this is the preach. So I'm an old fart, you know, baby boomer, and I've got student loans to pay, and you know, coming out of debt, and looking at the news of late that what was it, another 6 or 8 million Americans have gone into poverty since May. Another 1 million children in America into poverty. You know, here's the deal. Even people my age who have had it all have lost it because of bankruptcy due to medical expenses, have lost it due to medical expenses, have lost it due to, you know, crooked people on Wall Street taking houses, you know, overextending our people's capability to buy homes. And when the housing bubble burst in 2008, a lot of people had to start over again. I lost a home in 2008. I'm not real proud of that, but it happened. The value shot down. I was married. We moved into another house and I couldn't get it rented. And didn't have, you know, a ton of cash on hand. So I think we're all in the place where we need to look at what does the system do? And the system screws mothers left and right. If I had been a Black single mother, I was a white single mother. I had a ton of white privilege, I know that. But if I'd been a Black single mother, I'd have been blamed for having another child. I'd have been blamed for not getting my children to school on time when I was trying to catch a bus to, you know, get kids to daycare and school at the same time. You know, I might have been living in a really horrible housing situation where we didn't get to sleep at night because of all the gunshots and the community violence. We've got to look at the system that damns mothers, that does, you know, where we've got a system of supporting agriculture, so there's a surplus of corn so that, you know, baby formula is shoved down people's throats instead of people learning how to breastfeed when their babies are born. You know, I mean, sorry, but it's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in so many strikes against people who, you know, won't wear a mask but want to control my uterus. You know, we've just got to have a different system. And I agree about capitalism. Capitalism is a setup for this to happen. The countries that are happiest are the ones that have universal health care, are the ones that have a more socialistic type of running system. You know, I'm going to just close by saying that we need system change so desperately because the United States of America has put its ladder of success against the wrong wall, looking at gross domestic product, personal output, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, as opposed to the happiness and joy and health and well-being of our people. And I think that, you know, this movement is a great way to bring that measure of what really matters more into focus, because you know, if you're brought up thinking, because we listen to the dang Dow Jones Industrial Average on the news every day, I'd love to just cut that from the news and let's do a happiness index or a well-being index. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Thanks.
Jane, and then we will wrap up.
This has been I've been listening in while eating my lunch, so that's why I was hidden. But I did want to provide some, I think, useful information. There was a report that came out from the Rand Corporation just about a month ago, and I put the link to it in the chat. And it was stunning because what they did was they actually looked to see what policies, if the policies that were in place in the 1970s were still in place, that people who are making $50,000 a year now would be making $100,000. And what has happened, there's been a $50 trillion transfer to the wealthiest 1%, just by the policies that are enacted in our Congress. And that didn't have to be. And so it's not capitalism, it's the policies that have kept this transfer of wealth to the wealthy. And we have to get that back because that is at the basis of everything that we hope to change. If we don't change those policies, we're not going to make any progress in the things that you all have been talking about today. That has got to change as soon as possible. You know, if it doesn't, there's this great blog that is called Pitchfork Economics for good reason. You know, the pitchforks will come out even more than they have now. And so, so I just wanted to say that there are a lot of people in the field of economic policy who echo everything you said today, and who are working really hard to make those changes. So what I'm going to try to do is to get them more involved in the ACES movement, because I think there's a lot of parallels there in terms of the complete anger that that we have that people feel because we have let this happen. And by damn, I'm not going to do anything to let that continue. Just saying.
Thank you, Jane. Okay, so Rafael, maybe some closing words, and then we'll go ahead and end this call. And Rafael, when are we thinking we're going to revisit this series in January? Is that what we're thinking? Okay.
Yeah, we're taking that break to November and December, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll be redoing this in January. So if anybody has any topics you'd like to share, discuss in our safe space, because this is our community and it's for everybody. So just feel free to send them to me either via email, private message, on ACES Connections. You can get a hold of me. Also, I'd like to thank Dana and Donielle for helping me put this together. They're awesome. And Alison for facilitating. And also I'd like to thank Jane for for our founder, for providing the platform to bring us all together and just learning from each other and helping each other heal and fight. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rafael. This was really lovely and so needed. So thank you for taking this initiative. I want to, even though we won't come back to this particular Real Talk episode until January, we do have another community discussion on the calendar for the 4th of November, and it's going to be an election debrief process. Jane, do you have anything to say about that one?
I'm counting on it to be a celebration.
I like that. So okay, so keep that one on your radar. We don't have registration details yet, but we will soon. And you all will get an email with the opportunity to sign up for that and all future episodes. So next week we have next week is Ingrid is hosting an equity, and if you all haven't heard Ingrid before, she's just captivating. You don't want to miss it. We have Jane is doing a special one on Thursday. We have a great program lined up next week. So please, you should have gotten the email today with all the ones for next week, but we really cannot wait to see you. Don't forget to save the chat. Click on the 3 dots, click save the chat. And this recording will be posted by the end of the day. And thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.